You know how long has it been since summer ended? Too long. Too long. I'm sorry, it's been like a full week now, and no, it's just simply no. Like I'm literally already waiting for summer break to start because it's like, what the fuck? Summer literally just like what was that? Like it was like I can't even tell you one thing that I did during summer, except reading exactly 15 books throughout the whole summer. Let's look at all of them because I miss summer already, and through books I get to like relive the summer memories, which is awesome. And also, if you give me a chance to talk about books, I will take it. I will take it anytime. And one thing I want to quickly say is that this summer was full of amazing books. I think I did not read a single like 3-star read. Like all the books were either 4 stars, either 5 stars. So even when I'm talking about like books that are kind of low in the list, that is not because the books were bad. That's probably because I didn't really like them. So just well, briefly, I'm the problem. That's all. And the books are ranked worst to best. So we're gonna start with the books I liked the least. And let's start off strong with oh my god, I already feel bad. I feel bad already. But let's start. So the first book that I didn't really like this summer was Cry, the Beloved Country. Like, listen. I know it's like a good book, and as I already said, I'm the problem because I know this is a good book, and for example, my sister really liked it, but I just couldn't really get into it, and it's like one of those classics that just feels very long, and to me most of the book just felt like a character going from this place to the other place to this place and the other place. Some parts I really liked of the book and I was very interested, and then the next parts I was like I was like falling asleep. I was like, what is even going on? I can't keep up with this, and so yeah, I didn't really like that one, but overall I think it was fine. It was like 4 stars for me. The Shining, Stephen King, which you can watch me read that book in my July reading video if you want to. But this book was also like 4 stars. This is the first horror book I have ever read. And to be honest, I did not feel scared, like, at all. It wasn't bad. Like, I see why Stephen King is like a very famous author because he makes very interesting characters. You don't really get bored because the chapters are quite short, the story keeps going, it's very well paced. But it's just that I wasn't very scared, like, throughout the book. Yeah. So I guess that's how I felt about that book. Bile, a Latvian classic. Also, this book is interesting to read from a historical point of view, to see how like people lived in 1930s Latvia. The little girl, her name is Bile, how she saw the world, and that was nice. But then there were some chapters that just felt like they were dragging and dragging on. Like it also had the vibe of like, so this chapter we went to this relative, and the next chapter she went to another relative, and you're like, who even are these people? And they never show up throughout the book, they're never mentioned again. And some of the occurrences are either very interesting, either they're like kind of boring. So like it's interesting to read from a historical point of view, but like it's not like a novel that you're like, oh my god, I really want to continue reading this, I'm so interested, because that's just not what the book is like, you know. Another classic, scared I'm gonna get slaughtered for this. Fahrenheit 451 or 451. I don't know, like, how do you even say this? Doesn't matter. The idea of this book is very cool, but you can see it feels very rushed. I read this book in 2 days. The book feels very rushed, and it doesn't feel very planned out. And I read the foreword, like, of the book, and the author said that he wrote the book in 9 days, which is, first of all, insane. Like, to write a book in 9 days, that's, like, insane. No, that's not even 2 weeks. It's, like, literally just wrote, like, a classic in 9 days. But you could also feel that the book was rushed, because there was this character who just shows up in a book, and she feels like she's going to be a very important character, but then suddenly she disappears. And she was there for, like, 15 pages, and you're like, what do you, how do you, why were you, what? Mm. And you were just like, wait, but like for what? For what were you there? And you're like, like she was either supposed to be like a big character, but she wasn't, and then you're like confused about how is this. So yeah, it's a bit weird. Like it has an interesting idea, but I feel like it should have been written a bit differently. I'm really scared because like talking about classics, I feel how the people who like love the classics are gonna come here and slaughter me and just be like, you don't understand, you don't get it. And probably I don't, because once again, I'm the problem. I'm the problem, it's me. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on from me quoting Taylor Swift. Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. This book, once again, very interesting ideas. I thought I'm gonna get into this book more than I did, because some of this is very interesting. Like, I saw a lot of similarities to our world now, and it was very nice. But then it also was kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I just didn't really like the language how this book was written in. I know this book is often compared with 1984, and what I established from my own thinking is that I like how 1984 is written. It's more interesting to read, in my opinion, because they're both dystopian novels written in like 1930s, 20s, something like that. Then I think this one is closer to our reality and to what our reality could be then, because I don't think what happens in 1984 would happen in the future, because there's a lot of similarities to what had happened in the past, but I don't think that's how it's gonna, like, that's how our world would be in the future. I do think that Brave New World has way more similarities with people just kind of like, they don't need books because they don't read books because they just don't need them. They're like they're happy all the time. They're on drugs. They're partying all the time. Everyone's having fun. Like, why would that? I feel like that's very likely that will happen. That's currently already happening. So like, let's move on. Bunny, this is a very interesting book, in my opinion. Has very dark academia vibes. I read this during summer, so I suggest if you read it, then read it like during fall or something. It was quite interesting. Very fast to read. Like, I think this would get someone out of a reading slump, because while reading, you're like, what is even going on here? I don't understand. I've got no idea. I literally have no clue what is going on. At some point, it feels like the characters are going insane, but then you're like, are they going insane? I don't know. That's an insane book. That's literally all I can say. I love books about cults, and I think a lot of other people do. I don't know why, but books about cults, they just like, they hit different. Like, bro, they literally hit different. They're just like, cults. They're so fun to read about. I'm sorry, I can't even explain it, but I've heard so many people tell me this. Like, I know many people love books about cults, and I'm one of them. This one, perfect. Next one is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I really thought I would love this book, and I didn't. And I feel sad because I really thought I would love this book so much, and I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. Now it's like, but I do, however, want to read another Toni Morrison book, like either Sula, either Jazz, because I've heard those are good. So yeah, this one is somewhere in the middle of the list, because I thought I would love it. Like, I thought it's gonna be my like top 5 of books ever like read in my entire life, but it wasn't. And I was like, what do I do now? What do I do now? But good news is she has a lot of other books, because I want to read more books to understand if I like, I don't know, I don't want to judge her by one book. She has like so many books. That's why I'm gonna read more. Next book is Girl in Pieces. I did not expect to like this book at all. Did not. I had bought this book a year ago. I had stood on my shelf for so long. I had not picked it up. I just kind of ignored it. I was like, okay, you know. And then I was like, okay, fine. I'm gonna finally read it. I've had it for so long. It's like, I gotta read it. And I started reading it. I realized, wait, this is like really interesting. I was actually shocked how interesting that book was. Like, it's insane. Also, in the US, I've been in precisely 3 cities, which is New York, Phoenix, and Tucson. And how is it that the events of the story literally take place in Tucson, Arizona? I was like, what? How's that? I was really happy because that's literally, I don't know how is that, but that I found even more nice because I've been there. So like I could imagine the city, and I really like how the sadness and darkness and emptiness is explained in this book. Very, very compelling story. That was super random just now, but my grandma just came in and gave me a carrot. So that was slay. We're getting into the books. From this point, we're getting into the books that I absolutely loved. All of these were 5-star reads in my opinion. So let's go. This book I absolutely loved. The Hidden History of Gay Oppression in the USSR. That was, okay, you might not know this about me, but I have like a weird thing for like USSR, not USSR, but like, I really love the history of the USSR, like Eastern European history. Dictatorships, this sounds very weird, but like their history just fascinates me. So I really love that. And another thing that I really love is gay rights. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop. I promise I'm gonna stop, sorry. So yeah, this book is called Red Closet. It's literally amazing. Like, it was the most random book. It was like one single copy of the book at my like bookstore. I was like, okay, I've never heard of this in my life, never seen this in my life. This book does not have many reviews on Goodreads, but it was very good. It's just a lot of short stories about queer people from the beginning of the USSR in 1920s to the end in 1980s, and it's insane. Like, it was very interesting. I don't think I've ever found a non-fiction book this interesting, and I absolutely loved it. Then we have I Must Betray You by Ruta Shepherdis, or Rota Shepherdis. I don't know how to say it. I think in English you say Rota Shepherdis, but because I'm Latvian, Rota Shepherdis. Gotta pull over those Latvian skills, you know. First of all, we love our fellow Lithuanians. Anyways, yeah, besides that, this book is about Romania and the early 90s, and about the dictatorship in Romania. As I told you, I like dictatorships and I like history. So I think I think you can see a theme here. You can spot a theme already going like, and I did not expect to like this book, but I read this book in 2 days and it was awesome. And also very insightful because I had no idea. I knew nothing about the history of like Romania, literally not a single thing. And this was very interesting for me to know. Reading all of her previous books, I had known some of the history in them because 2 of her books are about people from the Baltics, and I'm from the Baltics, so I had known some of that. And then another of her books, which we're going to talk about later, was about Spain. And I mean, I knew that Spain was under a dictatorship, but I literally had no idea. I knew nothing about Romania, so it was very interesting to read a book about a historic period I literally knew nothing about. And it was very interesting, yeah. And I saw a lot of parallels, once again, with the USSR. Alone with You in the Ether? Still don't know how to say this book. Literally still don't know how to call this book. By Ollie Blake. Amazing book. I don't even know how to explain it. I can't even tell you why was this book so interesting. But it's just that the characters were so interesting to follow, their story, their thought process. What I realized is that Olivia Blake is really good at building interesting characters. Characters you want to read about, characters with interesting backgrounds. And that is her strength, because this book was no plot, just vibes. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And another book that was like really good was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I'm struggling with names and spelling, guys. Please help me. This book, the best fantasy book I've ever read. Just amazing. This was extremely interesting and I loved it. and we're gonna return to it because this is the first book in the series. And as I said before, Ruta Shepetis makes her comeback with The Fountain of Silence being in my top 3 of the summer. First of all, I read this book in Spain, and I feel like that just adds to the vibes. Like, most of the time, books you read, like, in specific places just perfectly fits, you know? Like, reading a book about Spain in Spain is perfect. I started reading this book and I was like, like, it's fine. I gobbled that shit up. It's like 500 pages. I loved it so much, but I also might be biased. So basically what the book is about is the Franco regime in Spain and how different characters live their lives in Spain, how they see Spain, how they see the regime, what kind of difficulties they have to face, what has happened basically at that time. And one of the characters was a photographer. I love cameras, I love photography, so reading that for me was just so extremely interesting, and I was like, oh my god, this is so interesting. And I feel like if you don't like photography and you literally do not give a shit, you'd probably just like not even care about that detail in the book. But I care so much, because I just love that kind of shit. So yeah, book number 2 was Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. I love this book. When I first finished it, I didn't realize how much I love it, but once some time had passed, I was like, oh my god, I can't stop thinking about this. This was so good. This book was fire. Once again, you can see me read this book in my July reading video. And I love this book so much, and it was so interesting and so emotional. And just like, it was so good. It was so good. So good. Amazing, in fact. Loved it. And number 1 book that I read this summer was Crooked Kingdom. That's the second book to Six of Crows. Six of Crows walked so this book can run, fucking sprint. It was so good. I read this book in 3 days. It was the most interesting fantasy book I've ever read in my life. I absolutely loved it. I love all of the characters. I think about them every week. Every day, in fact, I go to sleep and I think about these characters. I'm like, oh my god, what is going on? What are they doing right now? What would they be doing? What is going on? And yeah, that's it. That's just my little obsession with this book. I love this book so much. Can I tell you why? No. I do love it. I love it so much. So much. I can't even... And every person I've ever talked to says that they absolutely love the book. And I think that's a sign it's a good book. And if you want to read a fantasy book, you have to read this book. Because, like, it really is good. Like, I don't read fantasy books. I've, in my life, only read around 5. And this was amazing. So, yeah. Thank you for watching this video. These were all the books I read this summer. And bye. Hope I see you soon.